start again. It's a redskin.
Hey guys, this is Guner Womack with Outdoor Defiance, and today I'm going to tell you the story of the Womack Buck. I'd first like to go into a little bit of the history that we have with this deer. It all started 3 years ago. He was a young buck. He came in about 130, 140 inch deer, and he continued to go from there. When we first saw him, we knew he had tons of potential and he was a very exciting prospect that we had. And from that day on, we continued watching really hard. First time we laid eyes on this buck was 2018 rifle season. My dad was out here hunting, and we knew he probably needed another year. As he walked out all broken up, it made our decision that much easier. As the 2019 season approached, our anticipation for this deer kept on growing. Our first pictures of the 2019 season came in late September, and to our surprise, he grew into an 8x8. With the season only weeks away, I knew exactly what deer I had my eyes on. October 1st was the opener of archery in Oklahoma, and from that day forward, the hunt was on. Between work and college, every opportunity I had to get to the stand, I was there. The first few hunts were eventful to say the least. I saw a lot of deer and I saw a lot of very good bucks. But I had my eyes set on one buck. On October 22nd, the night before the big day, I was contemplating whether I was even going to go out. My friends looked at me as if I was crazy, and they told me, "You should really try." I had work the next day, and I had no idea if I was going to make it to the stand on time. But as they kept pushing, I finally gave in. The day of October 23rd, I was at work at the cross-country course at OSU. My boss had told me I had to weed eat a 200-yard fence line. Well, see, there was a problem there. I needed to get to the stand that day. So, like me, I sprinted down the 200 yards just so I could get to the stand. As I ran home, I rushed to get my camo on, to only get into the stand 10 minutes before the first deer showed up. The first few deer to show up on the hunt were 2 young bucks. The rest of the night was fairly uneventful, and as light faded, more and more deer showed up on the flock. As the hunt went on, a couple of our mature deer showed up, but to my dismay, he had not yet. The last few moments of daylight, he showed up. He came out at about 40 yards, and he came out an opening about this big. As I looked at him in my stand, I had to decide whether I was going to draw back my bow and try to make a 40-yard shot into a hole about this big, or see what would happen later in the night. He left the field, and my heart dropped. I thought I had lost him. Moments later, the 2 young bucks that first came out to start the night started pushing this doe across the field. He took exception to that. He ran out with his antlers down, forcing them to get out of the way. As he stopped and looked the other way, I grabbed my bow and maneuvered around my tree. As he presented me with a 25-yard shot, I began to draw back. He looked up at me, and I thought I was busted. As I stood there mid-draw, I could only hope he did not see me. He turned the other way, I got my full draw, I looked down my sights, and I let the arrow fly. It was pure. I heard a big thump, and he ran a measly 25 yards and laid down in the middle of our brush hog grove. I had done it. My first reaction was to call my dad, and of course, he did not answer. As I kept trying to call, I decided I was going to call my mom because I figured she would answer the phone. She picked up only to hear me screaming and yelling, trying to tell her exactly what I had done. She tried to get a hold of Dad, but of course, he did not answer. I had given up on that at the time. I decided to call Taylor. When he answered, he was currently walking out of his stand, so he was whispering. I had told him I had shot the 8x8, and all he heard was 8. He was excited, but to my dismay, he was not as excited as I thought he would be. As Taylor hung up, I decided I was going to call Tanner, who was hunting about 2 miles away from me. He heard my words very clearly and knew it was the 8x8. I was met with a scream, and he hung up. The last words he said were, "I'll be there as soon as I can." The first one to pull up was Tanner on his 4-wheeler. Right behind him was Taylor, which was kind of funny at the time because Tanner had beaten Taylor on his 4-wheeler when Taylor was in his truck. As they pulled up, Tanner jumped off the 4-wheeler and tackled me, screaming and yelling, congratulating me for what I had done. Taylor got out of the truck and proclaimed, "That is not the 8-point." I said, "You're right, it's not." As Taylor walked up, he looked at me and said, "You have just shot a state record." That was the first time that thought had crossed my mind. I finally got a call from my dad, him knowing exactly what I had done. I had told him I had killed the 8x8, and he was just as excited as my two friends. As we got done taking pictures, we loaded him up and headed home. As we got to my house, a lot of people were there to see exactly what I had done. As we were processing him that night, our neighbor looked at me and said, "Do you have a lawyer?" We all laughed, not thinking too much of it. After we got done processing the deer, I had posted a picture, and the only thing I said was, "Wow, that's all I've got." As my head hit the pillow that night, I had no idea what kind of storm I would walk into the next day. As I woke up, I had figured out that I had close to 500 new Facebook friends. Soon after my Facebook post blew up, I started receiving text messages from our local news outlet and also receiving messages from legends in the hunting industry. 2 days after I shot my buck, our local game warden Spencer Grace came out to score my deer, just so we knew where he stood. He measured 209 and some change, which only added to the hype. Following that, I was given the opportunity to speak on many podcasts, as well as being featured in numerous articles. One of the coolest opportunities I got was getting to do a live interview with Cam Poley from the Outdoor Channel. Fast forward to the Backwoods Show. After a 60-day drive period, we finally get to figure out whether my deer beat the record. A panel of game wardens at the Backwoods Show finally declared him the new Oklahoma Archery State Record Buck. His final net score was a whopping 188 and 5/8 inches, beating the previous record by only 1/8 of an inch. Following the announcement that he had gotten the new record, it was kind of a surreal moment for me. This whole time I was thinking, hopefully he's a state record, hopefully he's a state record. As he finally got it, I was relieved and I was excited. This deer has blessed us with God-given opportunities, and I can only wait to see what opportunities lie ahead.